He may or may not be doing that. I'm hoping not, since I just said something not quite nice about him. So this is our reporting out for our trip to Albany. So if Bill was here, he'd say, let's start with the pledge. So let's stand up and start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so who in this room went to Albany? All right, so some went and some are here to listen. So for those of you who did not go to Albany or have not been to Albany, just an overview. For many, many years, BOCES, in collaboration with New York State United Teachers, have been going up to Albany to advocate for public education, particular to BOCES. So that day happened on, I don't remember what date, February 26th. We took 2 buses of staff and students up. About 3 years ago, we added students to that mix, which totally changed the day, I think, for us and for the elected officials. And when that happens, we divide up into teams. So there were 6 advocacy teams that each went to see a certain elected official, actually 2 elected officials each. And we go up and we train before we go about what are the talking points we want to talk to them about, and then we have those talking points. And then, the teams each have an individual who is a recorder, so we have minutes of what happened, at least a summary of what happened. We have photographers, so we have photos of what happened. And then we have a leader and a greeter. One of the students is the greeter, so goes in and announces us to the elected official. And then we have the expediter that's supposed to try and keep the elected official on tap. So there are some questions here. Oh, actually, we're supposed to accept the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from February 4th?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All right. David, Kathy. So there are there not questions here?
There should be. Do you have?
Second page.
You can scan it.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, Kathy's solving my questions.
I'm having the question. There you go.
Oh, got it.
I'm a terrible board member.
So does everybody have questions? I was the only one who didn't.
No.
There you go.
Here, David.
Well said, it has to be. All right, so these are the questions. There are 4 questions. What's a good way? And on the back of this, actually, for those of you who can't remember what you did because you got up at a ridiculous hour in the morning to get to Sequoia by 4. There is also the schedule of which group went to see which elected official. So the questions, the first one is, what elected officials did you visit with? Why don't we have each team report out on each of the 4 questions? It's probably easier. And we'll start, can we start with team 4? Are you the only one at team 4?
I'm the only one.
Well, this is your lucky day.
Okay. We saw Senator LaValle and Senator Martinez, and Senator. What's that? I'm sorry?
We got the good Jew.
And they were both very eager to speak to the students and hear the stories. As far as our end of it, Senator LaValle kind of seemed a little negative this year. When we were talking to him, but he kept talking to the kids about fulfilling their dreams and pursuing what they want to do. Senator Martinez was very eager to speak to the students. She asked some direct questions about what they were doing, what she could do for them. So.
And what was the highlight of your day in Albany?
I guess getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get into Albany safely.
And in time for breakfast.
This was I guess about be my 8th time going up there, and every time I enjoy it more, and I really enjoyed having the students there. I mean, they really brought up, you know, a brightness to the day. So I enjoyed watching them, listening to them.
Any special advocacy points or messages that you believe you either heard from the elected officials or that they heard from your team?
Just that Senator Martinez said that the money's not there. She said we have to find a way to raise revenue without increasing taxes. She knows how important that is, but you know, that's what I got from her. I don't know how she's going to. I think there was no direct answer of what was going to happen, but she knows what has to get done. How is it going to get done? She was questioning.
Any recommendations you have or things that you could have been done differently to improve the advocacy day?
I thought it ran smoothly. I really can't think of anything.
Good, thank you for being the first. Team 5, would you guys call each other to show up?
Yeah,
You wanted to make a good impression.
There you go.
exactly.
All right, go ahead, take it away, Team 5.
All right, so we met with Joe DeStefano.
Stefano and
Anthony
Colombo.
Palumbo.
Palumbo or Columbo?
Palumbo. And to just to skip to question 3, basically what they said is kind of the same along the lines of year 2, is that, you know, the governor is kind of not really budging on his budget, and the money's not there, and they're trying to work with it, and it kind of, both of them seem frustrated
Right.
that things are not getting done as smoothly.
They both said that they will vote across party lines if it's what their constituency wants. So it doesn't matter to them as long as they're taking care of the people at home as best they can.
Right, they were both big on education.
Di Stefano said that he wasn't going to sugarcoat it, that they don't have the votes to defeat the other side. They don't have enough. So he said that they're going to stand up and fight it, but they don't have the votes right now, so he feels the governor's budget is going to pass. That's what he told us. He said they just don't have the votes. It's not even about money. I mean, they just don't have the votes to defeat all the other side.
What was the highlight of each of your days?
Well, me personally, my highlight was just hearing the stories of the other students and getting to meet those other students and, you know, hearing where all their different backgrounds and what they were working towards. I thought that was really, really great, and how excited they were to be there and to be representing Eastern Central Coast was just tremendous. And you know, watching them interact with the assemblymen was really, really nice. So,
Aside from that, for me, the most fun was trying to get the best picture.
Oh,
We
did
were
you
up
win?
on the
Yes,
stairs,
yes.
posing like rock stars. We
Yes.
were everywhere we could be that we thought we can capture a picture.
Yes.
We did it, and the
Our
kids
photographer
loved
did a
it.
great
So
job.
it was a lot of fun.
And I feel like, did they win?
I'm just back from vacation and I have not collected all of them, but.
I sent you the winning picture.
It was a good picture. It was a pretty good picture, but I haven't looked at all of them
We took a picture on the big marble
I saw it.
stairwell.
She actually thought it was a good. She showed it to me. So, yeah, I was quite impressed.
We liked it. It was fun. The kids loved it.
Were they protesting behind you?
No.
No, it was actually basically empty, so that's why we did it.
Early.
Yeah, we got there lucky. Good time.
I think my highlight was, I have the student's name, but I'm not going to say his name. His name is Ruben. He's from IAC. And when he was telling his story, I had tears in my eyes. I had to keep looking down and writing, but thank gosh I was a reporter again. He said that before BOCES, he got in fights in school, and he didn't value his life at all. And since BOCES, he's proud of himself, and he has a future now, and he's going to make himself and his family proud. And I just thought that was the highlight of my day right there, because here's somebody who didn't value a young person, and I said I did not value my life. And then and now he does, and that's amazing. That's just
He
the
was
best
al-
thing I could take away from, I know I'm supposed to be there to get public education funded, but that was the best thing I took away that day, was to see that young man say, I value my life now. That was amazing. I'm gonna cry again.
He was also petrified to speak at all. So it took,
Yeah,
like, all the other kids went,
yeah, I just,
and then Di Stefano was like, all right, come on, when you're ready, you know, and then he started to let it
yeah.
out, and before you knew it, it was out, and then in the next meeting, it was much more
That's the
natural.
one that got me, when he started to tell Palumbo, because he was more
So
natural.
he learned a lot in
He
those
blew
two
me
sessions.
away, he really
grew.
did. It was a good thing that we got out of there when we did, because if he kept talking, I was gonna just wail there.
Yeah, he was very,
He was.
very good.
And Di Stefano made a big point to let us know that he got his start in civil service at 201 in accounts payable.
Oh, yes.
So he definitely made us aware of that. And he did interject a lot with the stories of his children and what they.
Yes, I had to do my job.
Yeah, you were definitely getting it.
Reel him back in. Hey, wait a minute.
And when we posed the question to him about, does he support the merger of the foundation aid and the expense aid, he said he doesn't support it, but that's when he told us they don't have the votes to defeat it. So,
Any other special advocacy points or messages that you believe you heard from the elected officials?
not from them, but from the students. I heard 2 or 3 of them said that they wished that their schools, and they made a point to tell the elected officials, they wish their schools could afford to send them both years. A lot of their programs are 2-year programs, and they could only go senior year. And they kept saying, you know, we don't even see advertising for BOCES in our school, and we don't know about these programs.
And some of the
Yeah.
programs are 2 years and we only get to go our senior year, so we don't
Yeah.
actually get to
That was a
graduate
big
from the
point I think they
program.
were making.
Right.
And one thing that I want to just add that I found upsetting, that our students and our elected officials see the special education program as the program for bad kids. And they did say that a few times, and I felt so bad for Ruben. Although he rose above it, and I think he does see himself as having been a bad
Yeah.
kid, but I think we need to advertise it in a different way.
Yeah, they
to
said
kind
there
of
was a
get beyond
stigma
that.
associated with attending BOCES, and it wasn't a good stigma, obviously, it was bad, yeah. Within their own districts, with the kids, with their peers.
Right.
There was a stigma to saying that you wanted to go to BOCES or that you had to go to BOCES. It was a negative.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a stigma that has occurred or has been in place for many years, particularly for special ed, but also for other students. I mean, how many times have we heard parents say, like, hey, where are you gonna go to BOCES? Like, right? And then they end up here at BOCES, and we love them anyway.
Another fun moment I wanted to mention that came to me was in Mr. Palumbo's office, Mahogany was one of those students who only got to do 1 year. Now she's graduating, so she's going to have to figure out how to pay for the second year. But we were sort of just chatting away, right? We named her business already, right?
Yeah.
You know, so that was good. Mahogany's Cuts.
Yeah.
She's like a cosmetologist,
Yeah.
hairstylist. So she really was beaming, I thought.
Yeah,
You know,
Absolutely.
she was very quiet in the beginning, stone-faced, you know. By the end, she was happy and giggling,
Yeah.
so it was good.
You know, it's too bad that the kids can't be here, because really one of the highlights for me in the past years is how impactful it is for the kids
Oh,
to go. I mean, the kids who say, like, it's the best day of my life.
yeah. Well, that was Ruben.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
He was so, I don't know, he was like on cloud 9.
He really was.
All week, knowing that, you know, he had done that.
Mhm.
Right.
It made a big, big impression on him.
Yeah. And some of that honestly is their ability to interact with adults, with other BOCES staff, that's not necessarily staff that they know or work with on a daily basis, and, I think the respect and the professionalism and the collegiality that we as adults show them as kids. I remember, I think one of my daughters went on a trip. I had a daughter who was in the STEM high school for a year, and she went and lobbied in Albany, and she said she could not get over how nice the BOCES staff was. And again, staff that didn't know.
That was
her.
Abigail, right?
Yes,
She
were
was
you
in
on
my
your
group.
team? Yes.
Yeah, that's how I remember.
Yeah, but that's great feedback, and like, we don't ask people to do that, right? When we do training for staff, we do say, you're gonna have kids on your team, and, we don't necessarily expect you to chaperone them, we just expect you to make them part of your team. So that really warms my heart that they see that, and they appreciate it, and that it just happens because of the kind of people who work here.
And then my last comment was that we had a good time going to the top of the $1 Million Stairway, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they were actually
Protest.
protesting heroin or something.
Yeah.
And it was, their kids were like, what is that roaring noise?
I
you
know, it was a roar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like,
We went
whoa.
all the way to the top.
Right
in. Anyway.
Yeah, it was very cool. Any recommendations you guys have things that could be done differently?
Yes, the student bus left later than the staff bus, but somehow I think only were 15 minutes different in terms of the arrival time. But I think, from what I understand from the staff that had to leave early, well, some of the staff, I don't want to say everyone, but many people felt that they would have liked to have stayed longer so that they also would have the opportunity to go to the museum.
Sorry, that was the people who went on the staff bus and left earlier. That is, in part, it was an agreement because we do share the bus with the Western BOCES people who decided that they did not want to, so we, made that compromise. But we can absolutely have that discussion with them next year and see if they felt the same way too.
Okie dokie. Team 6.
I was just conferring with my department on the dirt on our experience that day, so I wanted to make sure I had all my points.
Well, I happen to know that Sam probably could tell me all about a day that he had in Albany where they
Whether
used
it happened or
to.
not.
Once upon a time.
Welcome to BOCES!
So actually, it would have been nice to have Sam on the team.
It was a dark and stormy morning.
One dark night. All right, so my team was fortunate enough to meet with Fred Field, and Fred is a tremendous advocate of BOCES, and the way he articulates his knowledge of not only the budget structure up in Albany, but his advocacy for the agency and his support of the agency really, rings home, and it did ring home with the students that day. He clearly understands our points for the day, relative to foundation and expense aid, and his feeling in the sense that I got from his was that the expense-related aid will probably not ultimately be, winding up in the foundation aid as the governor proposed. So that was a good, positive from him on that. We were supposed to meet with Mike LaPetri, and I was actually looking forward to that because somebody gave me a little bit of insight, so I was hoping that was going to be a challenge that our team would have been up to, but unfortunately he did not make it, and we met with someone in his office, not even the young lady who was identified as his staff. So really what we did was just express the advocacy points and hand out the material and let the students talk in his office. But back to Fred, he really does a great job explaining to the students, because like most of our officials, they like to hear from the students, and it's always gone over really very well. The highlight for my day is always interacting with the students. I mean, I put a little extra effort in to educate them on my knowledge, specifically the knowledge of the advocacy points for that day, and expanding on that from, my personal experience in my role here. But, being able to prepare them and knowing that they feel comfortable, that the expectation would be that they would get a chance to speak, and they would have their opportunity to talk about how our organization has impacted their life. And I have to tell you, normally I have a tremendous sense of pride, but when I heard these students that day talk about how impactful their experiences in BOCES has been to their lives. You know, some went, you know, good and better, and some were, you know, obviously worse and are now better. It just really enhanced my sense of pride about all the good that we're doing for these students. So it was really, you know, generally positive from the kids, and they really, you know, they listened to the elected officials or the folks that spoke. I have to say they were really very in tune when I spoke, and they paid a lot of attention to me when I was talking about, you know, what we were going to speak about and how I expected the time to go in the room. And I have to say, I'd love to have them here to get their feedback, because my sense was that they all had a great day. And to me, I think if you said you want to sign up now for next year again, every one of those students would probably say, yeah, absolutely. So it was really very, you know, very positive, you know, and like I said, you know, Fred is great because he goes through it all, and he did as much as he could to educate based on where we were in the budget cycle and the amount of the budget and his points on that. So that was really, you know, really positive. But, you know, so obviously the most impactful thing that I heard from him was that he's pretty confident that expense-related aid and BOCES aid, right, more specifically, will not be bundled in with foundation aid. So to me, in the long run, that, you know, is obviously positive for us, right, with regards to how that impacts our services and what we do. So that was, you know, that was something that I keyed on, because, you know, that's important to know and understand. And I explained that again to the students and the other folks on, you know, on the team that may not be 100% clear on how those functions work, and, you know, in the structure of our agency. Recommendations, I have to be honest with you, you know, I think it through. I think you did a great job. I have to agree that it would be nice if the folks on the other bus could have stayed an extra hour. It probably would be nice if we could have another follow-up like this, but with the students, so we could all, everybody on all the teams could sit around and discuss, you know, go through this again, but then get the students' feedback and see, you know, how impactful it was for them, and if they get an overall understanding of, well, not only what the day's about, but what goes on, you know, up in the Capitol, the legislature up there, and how that really impacts what we do every day. So that would really be the only difference. Getting up that early is not my favorite thing to do, but, you know, all in all, that's why I've done it probably more than 10 years now in a row. So yeah, good day all the way around. I'm happy to be part of it.
Nice. Thank you. Team 3.
So we had the pleasure of meeting with Stephen Engelbright's office and with Phil Ramos' office. Our group actually had, so we met with two offices, but we met with three different people. So when we got to Stephen Engelbright's office, he was not available, so we met with his counsel, his lead counsel. So I should back up. All three, so we had three very different experiences. So we met with Stephen, with his counsel. You know, so the kids told their stories, and we spoke about some of the advocacy points, and he actually pushed back a little bit. And it wasn't because he didn't agree or disagree necessarily with anything we were trying to advocate for, but, you know, what I came to realize towards the end of it was he was trying to educate us on what, you know, how we should advocate for these things. So we spent some time talking about the collapsing of expense-based aid and foundation aid, and he kind of challenged all of us to tell him why is that a bad thing. So we kind of went around the room as to why that would be, and he said, well, here's what I would say. And he gave his explanation. I said, well, that's a great explanation. Thank you. So it was, you know, you kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable, but it was, I really do believe he was just trying to educate the room. So we finished with him. We were ready to leave, and someone at Engelbright's assistant says, oh, wait, Zimmerman is available if you'd like you to step in. So then we stepped in. He had a photographer there. He took some really great shots with the students, and then he sat us down, and we were a little bit early anyway, so we had about 20 minutes to go through the stories with him, and he listened to the kids speak again. And you know, when you meet with Zimmerman Engelbright, he's just one of the nicest people that you're ever going to meet, and just always has a nice smile on his face and tells his story. And, but you know, again, both his counsel and he definitely agreed that the collapse of the aid wouldn't happen. So we left his office, we went to Phil Ramos' office. That was good for me because I'd never met Senator Ramos before. For whatever reason, it just never was in the cards that I met with him. He was just so engaging with these kids. I think a former BOCES kid himself, right? and started as a civil service person. Has a great story, and just listened to everything that the kids said, and then kind of came back to them with his experiences. And on top of that, so there was one girl who's a Haitian American. Her parents were Haitian born, and she's the first generation American. And her story is she's in the nurse assisting program because she wants to learn medical skills so that when she starts her missionary nonprofit, when she graduates, she wants to be able to help people medically, just like her sister who's in nursing school now. So Phil says, he goes, oh, and she lives in Bay Shore, which is in Phil's backyard. He goes, oh, have you ever heard of the such and such Haitian American Association? She goes, no, I haven't. He goes, that's a group I helped start in Bay Shore. Let me get you the contact information. You should reach out to them. And then another girl was talking. I forget exactly what her aspirations were. They said, you know, we're always looking for interns in our home office. Would you like to have some information? So one girl walks out with, you know, information from the station. The other one walks out with an internship. Just again, totally engaging and making it worth their while to come, not just to tell their stories, but to kind of engage them in the process of advocacy and state politics. So great experience for the kids. My highlight is always them. From the moment they got there, when we were sitting down at breakfast, they were so excited to have that extra hour. They were so excited, like, oh, I can't wait to go to the museum. I heard the Capitol's great. So when we finished, one of the students we had was in the law enforcement program, and she's now decided she's going to enlist in the Army and serve her time in the Army and likely go into some sort of federal law enforcement. So if you remember that day, when you walk through to the office building, Fort Drum was there all set up. And so when we got upstairs, did you see Fort Drum was downstairs? She goes, yes, I wanted to stop. I said, well, stop when we go back down. She spent 20 minutes there, went to every table, spoke to every soldier that was there. She had the vest on, she was holding all this different stuff, she was in her glory. And we still had time to leave there, go toward the Capitol, which I had never done before, all the time that I spent there. And they soaked it up. We went to that protest, and watching their reactions to that, some of them were amazed, some of them were excited, some of them were actually a little nervous and scared. And they were like, what are they protesting? And I had to piece it together, because there was a lot going on there, right? There was a lot going on there. So we had a great conversation with that. And then they went to lunch. I had to split up from them. They went to the museum afterwards, which they were looking forward to. So that was a great thing. I pointed out the advocacy points. The biggest thing that we took away from that was all their feelings of the collapse of Expense Based Aid. And any recommendations? You know, I hadn't heard that feedback about the staff bus. I wouldn't make any recommendations for the first time. I'm normally up there Monday, Tuesday for my normal district superintendent's meeting, and so I just stay up that extra night and meet people there. That was the first time you all were there with enough time to eat any sort of breakfast and not have to be running to the security line. And like I said, they were so excited to have that extra time to experience what most people don't know Albany has to experience. All around good day.
Nice. Team two?
That's me, the cheese stands alone?
No, I'm here to support you.
Good. So team 2 was the team that met with AIDS only. Garbarino came in at the last minute. So we started with Andrew Garbarino's aide, and everybody went through their pitch, their experiences, so on and so forth. And the 12-year-old who was there, actually he's probably a junior in college or whatever, had this sort of odd, blankish stare on his face as everybody was sharing their BOCES experiences and whatever. And when everybody finished, he said, well, I went to Eastern Suffolk BOCES. And you went to Milligan?
Well, no, so like he was sitting there.
It was
like,
an
making
odd
notes,
expression.
notes, right. So I finally said, do you know anything about BOCES? And he says, well, as a matter of fact, yeah, I'm a graduate in law enforcement. And then, like, they started talking, you know, he started talking with the kids in the room. I don't know if I don't think we had a law enforcement kid in our
No, we didn't have a
But
law
that
enforcement.
was, and that's not the first time that has happened. So these young folks who are up there covering offices, as these elected officials are doing whatever they're doing, really know, like, next to nothing. I mean, they're, these are internships for college, there might be poli-sci, students, and they just are told, like, write down everything people say.
And they would have started in the January semester, so they were there only like 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
They had no clue
But
what was going on.
it was very nice to hear him be able to talk with the kids and what district he was from, I don't really remember, Sachem maybe?
Sachem, yes, Sachem.
and-
Sachem or Longwood, one of the
Yeah,
two.
and then Andrew Garbarino came in, so the kids had the opportunity again. So that was the first time they told their story, so then they had the opportunity to, share them again with Garbarino, which it's always better the second time, right? They get their sea legs under them and,
I think they were surprised that he was as casual and as comfortable with, and their routine of what they needed to say was much smoother. You could almost see the ease with which then they started to have the conversation after the first one, because they were panicked. Absolutely panicked. And then, what did we see besides Barbarino? It's
Doug Smith, but he wasn't up there.
Right.
So we saw an even younger age.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, I mean, he had to be like a sophomore or a freshman because, and they were both Albany poli-sci. So they started to talk to the kids about how they moved from high school to college, what that transition was like, how they got their internships, why they chose poli-sci, as much as the advocacy stances. And basically both of them really couldn't add any information. They were note takers rather than an engaged conversation. And both knew about BOCES, but certainly Andrew Garbarino's staffer, Teddy, I think his name was, he knew certainly more than Smith's. But what you did see in the evolution of the day was the students' confidence and their openness in telling their stories blossom. So that by the time the day finished, they were bonded with each other because they weren't necessarily all friends in the group. But they also talked about the programs that they were in because they all weren't from the same building. So it was really nice to see. And one of the children was he from another group, the one who got the person to take the kids through the Senate?
No, he was from our group, but he connected with the kids in another group. So somebody had worked out with his mother who had a connection to get a tour of the Capitol. So we ended up needing to kind of meet up with this person, which is a little bit of a problem in the Capitol because there's lots of stairs that look very similar.
Right. Right.
And it is a little bit of a maze, but we did eventually
Yes.
connect with him.
Connect with him. And he was a staffer in the Office of Budget years ago, which Julie and I were talking about. We did eventually figure out, we did actually see him years ago with students, when Flanagan was head of the Senate. I think a highlight for the kids, we wheeled ourselves onto the assembly floor,
Yes, that was very nice.
and the young woman who...
Actually, Kathy wheeled us.
No, we just...
Is it possible for us to come in? Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
They said Shorbus for
And they literally were able to take their picture right in front of the speaker's seat, so.
And she was great, and it was between sessions, and she
Yeah.
told them, and Kathy actually prompted her. She said, so, tell us, can you tell them, how does the law get passed? And, and she showed them the seat, and, she said, it's all electronic, it used to be, we'd have piles of paper like this, now everything is electronic on this, looks like a little bit of
An
iPad, and, she said if they want to vote yes, they push that button, if they want to abstain, they push that button, and
here's the big board, you can see who voted, so on and so forth. I mean, outside of sitting in somebody's seat, they pretty much had what you would get on a tour without having to be on a tour. So one of my recommendations for the future is that if you're around and you chummy up with the guard or the person who's outside the door, or even sometimes the aides will do that for you if there's not going to be session. Literally, we were there probably 10 minutes before the bells were gonna ring for the session to begin. We tried to do that on the Senate side, didn't work so well. But they did get their tour from Boyle, somebody Boyle, who works right now for a lobbying firm, one of the PR lobbying, large PR lobbying firms. So they did get to see a lot of the Capitol.
All of governors?
Whole governors, they got to see the war room, they got to tour a little bit of the African American display that was there, and we snuck our way into the governor's hallway. So they got to see the photos of the governors and the elevator where the governor comes up and down, you know, and visitors go up and down to see the governor. So we had a few backstage things.
So, what was the highlight of your day?
Sliding in the cafeteria.
Oh, yeah, she kind of took a fall.
I did a little bit of a split.
And unfortunately, I was carrying lunch, so I'm like, get up. Are you okay? Do I need to put this down?
So it was memorable because the bruise is still on my name.
Yeah, if you're gonna fall, let me not be the one who's
But the kids were phenomenal, and you know, when you start out in the morning and they won't even talk to you because they're like in their little clusters and they don't know what you're about, and by the time they left, they were.
Yes, the free phone number. Yeah.
No.
You know, not only more comfortable with themselves, but with each other, you know, they're kids that they don't know. Yeah, that's a huge, like when, knowing kids these days, you have to know, that's a huge stress for them, right?
Yes.
You know, you take them out of their comfort zone. I will say, I didn't see anybody super connected to their phone, you know, but
More take by picture,
they're
that's
interacting with each other, interacting with us. I will say the highlight of my day is always the kids, but this extra hour was huge.
Yes.
You know, because you didn't feel stressed, you could actually spend time in the Capitol, walking around and seeing things, and spend time in the museum. It really, and we didn't get back a whole lot later. I think it added a huge piece to the day. Yeah, we've thought that for years, right? You spend all this time going up there, you run around, and then you spend all this time coming back. So thank you, Pat, for making that happen.
Great arrangement. And that mom, when they were picking up the bus, there was a mom who had related that that her son's experience in BOCES was so impactful.
Well, she's the one who arranged the tour.
Yeah.
Recommendations that you would have?
I think the only recommendation I would have is for the kids to have their cheat sheet prepared. Because it took us a while at breakfast to get them to open up about what is it about BOCES that they would like to share or talk about, or their experience or themselves, that I didn't know whether they had any preparation before they came.
So, and it's funny, because my recommendation was going to be, so we had kids from a variety of buildings, right? It was very clear to me that there was a different kind of preparation that happened in different buildings. A couple of them from the same building were able to say exactly what they had been told to be able to answer, which was, like, what do you like about your program? If you weren't in this program, what program would you be in? And then something else. I think it might be helpful, and you know, I know we have people here who prepped kids, to give maybe like 3 or 4 talking points or things that you could prep kids on. So we luckily had the time to prep them on, because elected officials don't care what other program you would be in if you weren't in this program. But I think, you know, and, you know, some buildings have them do their elevator speech. You know, some buildings obviously say, see if you can answer these questions. And yes, there was definitely a different level of preparation. By the time we had kind of prompted them with questions, I mean, it was amazing. They were certainly able to answer those questions, like, how is this different from your high school? You know,
That was a really important question,
Yeah.
because that opened a whole lot of gates.
yeah. So I
And
think,
what would your experience be like if you didn't have BOCES? And some of them were like, I don't think I even finished school.
yeah.
I mean, that clearly came out.
And I think are we having an abjuration review with this? Yeah, so we can bring that up there. I don't know if anybody kind of has a template that they use when they prep the kids, but I think maybe to share that and, you know, make sure that everybody is kind of doing something similar. But they, and the, you know, the other piece related to that, you know, some of the kids came, you know, either dressed in their skills uniforms or dressed in their BOCES uniforms. There were a couple of kids that did not come looking like they were dressed for Advocacy Day. You know, one had on blue jeans and then a shirt that wasn't really tucked in. And listen, I mean, I think that's great. I think, you know, I love him anyway, but I think, you know, part of going up there is understanding, you know, you're here to take a professional kind of position. And he was, you know, he was a nurse assisting student, so it wasn't like, you know, wasn't like he was in a program that would be what he wears to school. I'm sure he's wearing a uniform to school, you know, as a nurse assisting student. So just a little bit, listen, you know, and it's not so much about the blue jeans, wear blue jeans, but wear a
Jacket or something.
right. And the vast majority of the kids did. I almost felt sorry for the couple of kids that didn't, because the vast majority of those kids obviously had been told, like, this is appropriate dress. And they were all changing on the bus.
Yes.
Pulled into Albany. But,
So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you did for Ruben.
Well, Ruben needed clothing.
yeah.
And Mr. Gallup took him shopping and bought him pants and a shirt and a tie and shoes and socks, so that he could be appropriately dressed. And Mr. Mahoney hemmed his pants and
Yeah, he told me he'd never stepped foot in an Old Navy before, and he's all excited.
Oh, wow.
He's at Old Navy. We got his clothes there, and then another day we got his shoes at Marshalls, and he couldn't believe the deals he can get at Marshalls. He like called his girlfriend, and like,
Creative
baby, we're
monster.
going to Marshalls next week. So, I mean, you know, and it was just really nice, and he was so appreciative, and he was so.
What did he wear? Like,
We got him a pair of black slacks
Uh-huh.
and a white shirt, a white nice button-down shirt with some nice shoe like Cole Haan shoes or something like that
Oh,
from Marshalls. Yeah, you know.
Probably made it feel really good.
Oh, he loved it. You know.
And a belt.
And a belt, yes, and a belt which he wears every day. I'm very happy about that. No sagging pants anymore, which is nice. But you know, every day he's like, Mr. Gallo, you got my clothes. I'm like, yes, Ruben, they're right here. Every day, Mr. Gallo, you got my clothes. You got my clothes. You got my clothes. So it was super. Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah.
So that's probably something as a prep for this event that maybe we overlook is what students have or don't have in order to get to this event, or even know that that would be an option.
It was not my sense that these two kids that I'm talking about, it was not my sense that they did not have clothes. It was my sense that somebody had said to them, okay, this is appropriate.
You know, sometimes I know people just need an example, or they need
Right.
good,
Business
not
casual.
good, you
Right.
know? Like if you
Right.
say, don't dress for the occasion,
Yeah.
that is open to interpretation,
Yeah, right,
you know?
right.
Maybe be a little more explicit.
yeah, to say you need to put on a button-down shirt and you,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Tie would be,
Yeah.
And if you need a dress for success rack or whatever, just
Yeah.
let some of us
I
know.
Yeah, our programs certainly do that.
Certainly help that.
It's kind of, taking them out shopping is kind of, I don't know, it's like an honor, I think,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
makes it a really special.
It was funny. He was looking at every shirt, like, does this look good? Does that look good? I'm like, yeah, it looks good, looks great, but let's go a little bit more, let's go a little bit more, let's go white shirt, black pants. He's like, oh, you're right, Mr. Gallo, you're right. It's gonna look good. So he was very appreciative of that, and that was always nice.
Good day.
I have our team leader from Group 4 is with us online.
Nice.
Lisa Mangiello.
Okay.
First, she says, great job, Mary. Then she says, one of the incredible students from her group that I met for the first time on Advocacy Day also came to a Blue Ribbon Commission meeting and did a great job of sharing her experience and thoughts. These students are incredible. I'm so proud to work alongside them. And then our board trustee, William Miller, is also with us, saying students' experience and interactions will remain with them for a long time. Excellent job by all.
Bill, did you hear what Julie said about you?
Dave. So, any questions from people who did go, or questions from other teams?
I just hope those, I'm sorry to interrupt. Well, one thing about the breakfast, it was great that we were able, because last year we didn't have time, but when obviously the one elevator thing we can't control, but when we got up there, my whole group of students, all 6 of us had nowhere to sit, so we had to ask the waiters to maybe to set up a new table, and we could have to look for chairs and everything like that. I think maybe just for the future, at least set up like 6 individual tables for the kids. You know, we're spending all this time talking about how much we love interacting with the kids, but then when the kids get up there, they got nowhere to sit to eat. Thankfully, we were able to get a table, you know, to sit and eat with them. But I think that would be nice in the
When we
future.
get closer to next year, let's make a note. We can emphasize, because normally, I don't remember, was this your first year?
This is my second year.
Second, so you remember from the year before, you guys were running in.
Right.
Running down the hallway.
Right.
So they never expected us to actually be there to eat. We will stress with them next time that, you know, if we're gonna do the same schedule, that just heads up, have some extra food ready, but also have some.
Bacon at tables.
Jim Beck has made sure that we will never be short bacon.
Right.
That's all I
Right.
But that we can make sure there's extra room, because you're right, is that before you guys get there, that room is packed as it is.
Right.
And then they do their introductory ceremony, and then people break up, which is why they were going to do it to begin with. So we can just stress with them that we're going to plan to be there earlier again.
And just talk to NYSED and ask them not to do it on Ash Wednesday.
Yeah. Found that a problem too.
That might be a
Nobody
bonus.
Well, there actually was some seating, but they were like only like 2 people could sit at them. They were along the side. And there was a lot of the staff looking for who the students were on the team, and the students looking for the staff as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it wasn't, there definitely wasn't enough seating, but if they situated the room a little bit better, it would have been more conducive to the groups.
And there is an outside entrance to that place, it doesn't benefit you all when they drop you off on the bus. There's an outside
I
entrance.
thought there was, you could go, but I think the stairway was closed.
You know where the fountain is in the middle? That's how I got in. I walked up from my entrance in there, and then you can get in that front door, but where they drop you off on the bus.
Do you know if they can drop off? No.
No, we just scope it out. You know, I'll scope it out.
Somewhere by State Street or something.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, if you dropped off right in front of the state, that's
Yeah, if you dropped off in State Ed, yeah, that's right, you could walk in and pass the Dunkin' Donuts.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Where did you come from? I didn't see you all day until I was on that escalator and you took me on the stairs and
on the
said,
escalator, I'm running by her on the stairs, I'm like, bye.
you go, Tracy, I'm beating you. And I was like, I couldn't even run past anybody. And I'm like, where did you come from? It was so funny. I was like, all day.
It's like a ninja.
Well, it's interesting because after Advocacy Day, I went to New York State School Boards and Shelley Mayer spoke. Shelley is the head of the Senate Education Committee. And she was adamant that they were not gonna accept the combined aids, and that they were going to do whatever they could to increase foundation aid. Now, part of that conference was about how the governor calculated what the revenues were and what the Medicaid loss was. That some of the Medicaid loss on the books is not an actual real dollar loss. But it's the way the Office of Budget Management kind of calculates things. And it's been since then remarkably quiet. So that was around February 7th, 8th. No, March 7th, 8th. There's been very little out of Albany since then. And now with all this coronavirus and allocating money and shutting things down, I'm almost wondering if they're going to delay adoption of the budget, or if all of this is going to delay budget negotiations and the governor is going to get the budget that he wants, because he legally has April 1st, he has control of the budget if the legislature doesn't vote. So my recommendation at this juncture would be that everyone has to really push not to combine the aid categories and to fundamentally increase the aid to education and getting a budget by April 1st. And the key time to do that is next week. Which is why shutting things down is a dangerous thing for all of us. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but and we're all quiet.
So this, this coronavirus, whatever, so the struggle with, what should be open, what should happen, who should go where, who shouldn't go where, is only the surface. The financial impact that it is having on the state and will continue to have is going to be a problem for institutions like public education that are funded with state dollars. So, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, they're talking about shutting the city down, city transport down. And if that happens, everything stops.
When you say shut it down, you mean mass transit?
Yep.
LIRR, and
Yep.
subway, everything?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So they're going to struggle with this.
So I don't want you to go to the bank with the idea that they're shut, but that's one of the things they're starting to talk about. They've stopped all visitation into the Capitol in DC, which means that any lobbying that would have gone on in the next couple of weeks stops. So everything is in flux. And if we don't remember our center and what we want, we can easily get pushed aside. And I think that's my one message. I guess I have a question post visiting Albany, which is, have the students, have the teams written back to the people they've seen? Okay, so I will recommend, this is my strongest recommendation, is a day or two after they come back, the students need to write a letter or an email to the person they saw, synopsizing what they said or what they talked about or what they agreed to or whatever, and hitting 2 or 3 key points for BOCES. So the idea that, thank you, Teddy, for meeting us in Andrew Garbarino's office. We appreciate, you representing Garbarino. It was nice to see another BOCES person. Here's what we want to emphasize. If I didn't have BOCES, I wouldn't be in school any longer because I would have dropped out already. If I didn't have, I love my BOCES such and such program because now I'm out in the community and I'm working. Just 2 or 3 points, and then end it with, please don't consolidate the aid and please, fund education. That's enough. 5 or 6 sentences is enough. But the important part of advocacy is not only the face time, but following up in the loop. Because then they remember you came. Otherwise, you're just a photo. Sorry, that's my 20 years of PTA doing this.
Any other comments, questions?
The politicians that they went to see, were they aware that you were coming?
Yeah.
Was there a prearranged schedule?
Yeah, so it's all scheduled. And this is what happens. They get pulled to meetings and stuff that they don't expect. Sometimes we know ahead of time we're gonna meet with an aide and not with them. But it's not unusual if they get called to a meeting that they have somebody on and take their appointments. But
You
yeah,
can just show up.
you can
You
just.
can go through security, but it's a public building, you show up, not just obviously.
But whether they'll open the door to see you is reliant really on an appointment, because you could just be in the outside part of their office.
This time of year, they're booked every 15 minutes from when they get there until they open the sessions. Show up there.
And the real key time when they are primed for the budget is that early to mid-March place. That's really where they're doing the hearings, we will have heard the testimony of the key players in education at the education committee hearing and so on. And most of the advocacy groups are saying the same thing. So focusing on what's important to BOCES is important because the groups do large chat, but they may not hit BOCES particularly.
Any other questions, comments?
I just want to comment about the BOCES aid and how that kind of impacts the districts. Right now, I'm working with Sage, spends a lot of time with BOCES, kind of across the board. And jokingly, John Keefe will say, hope we get that BOCES aid. So even if they collapse the aid into the other category, being able to at least see the breakdown and know that they're really getting funded based upon that spend, it's kind of important.
Yeah, very important. I think, so other than DiStefano, everybody that I spoke to, and we were up there a week later, advocating with superintendents as well, and probably you heard the same thing when you were up there with PTA, said that is not gonna happen. He doesn't like expense-based aid, the governor, because he feels like he doesn't have control over them. But there's really support on both sides of the aisle to not roll expense-based aids into foundation aid. But I will say, like, all of that was said before the bottom fell out of the state. I mean, it is really, everybody is super focused on where to go next and, with trying to stem this public health situation.
And Medicaid and medical financing the whole medical system is gonna now be
Right.
the priority.
Right, but it's, there's a whole bunch of reasons why it doesn't make sense to do that. It really takes away districts' ability to plan, and so we'll see where it goes, but, some people will say it was a distractor, right? If you're busy talking about, you really shouldn't collapse expense-based aids into foundation formula, you don't have to talk about the fact that you really should pay more foundation formula. Or, you really should raise the cap on the teacher's salary that you aid for, for BOCES programs.
And they don't understand that at all.
Yeah, so it really takes the conversation away. But I would be very surprised if they did that. But I've seen surprising things happen. So, and it's really counter to what the governor has been saying for years. He talks about the importance of cooperating and sharing services, and that's what the structure of BOCES does, so. So any other questions? All right, so Pat asked, do we want a group photo of folks who went to Albany for advocacy? I'm sure it won't be as good as the ones on the steps, but. All right, where do you want us up after, next to the BOCES?
So we had 2 girls with 1 boy.
Are you so much more, we all go differently?
I know,
Oh, Director,